I stood in my childhood bedroom doorway on Christmas morning, watching snowflakes drift past the window while downstairs my sister opened her final gift. The squeal that followed could have shattered glass. Madison. Always Madison. And me? I'm Harper. The responsible one. The invisible one. The one who learned early that love in this family came with a price tag. When I descended the stairs, the living room looked like a bridal magazine had exploded. White boxes everywhere, each one stamped with designer logos I recognized from my mother's endless scrolling. Madison sat in the center of it all, 24 years old and glowing, her engagement ring catching the Christmas tree lights as she held up a check. $47,000. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. For your dream wedding, sweetheart. Everything you've ever wanted. My father beamed, his arm around my mother's shoulders. Only the best for our girl. Madison looked up at me, her smile so bright it hurt to look it directly. Can you believe it, Harper? She breathed. A full wedding budget. Venue, dress, flowers, everything. I forced my lips into something resembling happiness. That's amazing, Mads. My mother gestured toward the coffee table. We have something for you too, honey. The gift sat there, small and rectangular, wrapped in newspaper comics. Not even real wrapping paper. I picked it up, feeling the weight of something plastic and light. Inside was a coupon book. The kind sold at grocery store checkout lanes for $4.99. Ohne free hook. One breakfast in bed. One movie night of your choice. The price sticker was still on the back. $3.50 marked down from clearance. My mother's voice came from somewhere far away. We thought it would be more meaningful than something material. You know, quality time together. I stared at the coupons, at the cartoon drawings of smiling families, at the cheapest possible gesture wrapped in the language of thoughtfulness. Madison got $47,000. I got $3.50 worth of promises that would never be kept. The room waited for my reaction, for me to smile and say it was perfect, to play my role as the understanding older sister who never needed anything. Instead, I closed the coupon book carefully. Thank you. My voice sounded calm, distant. This is very thoughtful. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. My hands didn't shake. My eyes stayed dry. Something inside me had simply turned off, like a circuit breaker flipping in the dark. I was 31 years old. I'd spent my entire life watching my parents pour everything into Madison while handing me scraps and calling it fairness. But this wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was a message, delivered on Christmas morning with a clearance sticker still attached. You don't matter. You never did. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman who'd spent 3 decades trying to earn love that was never going to come. Then I made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like I was worthless, I'd show them exactly what that looked like. Growing up, I understood my place in the family hierarchy before I had words for it. Madison was the miracle baby, born after years of my mother's fertility struggles, arriving 7 years after me when everyone had given up hope. From the moment she entered the world, she was precious in a way I never could be. I was the practice child. The one they figured things out on. Madison was the masterpiece. My childhood memories are filled with moments of watching. Madison's ballet recitals in auditoriums packed with relatives. My piano recitals in school gymnasiums with empty seats where my parents should have been. They have to stay home with your sister, my grandmother would explain. She's too young to sit through your concert. Madison was always too young, too sensitive, too special to be inconvenienced. I learned to be convenient. When I was 12 and Madison was 5, I wanted to go to space camp. I'd saved birthday money for 2 years, had the brochure memorized, could name every module and activity. My mother sat me down at the kitchen table, her face arranged in gentle disappointment. Honey, your sister needs braces. The orthodontist says if we don't start now, she'll need surgery later. Madison's teeth were perfectly straight. I'd seen the x-rays myself, sneaking looks when my mother left them on the counter. But I nodded, understanding what wasn't being said. Madison's hypothetical future mattered more than my concrete present. I went to public school. Madison went to private. They need small class sizes for her learning style, my father explained. You've always been self-sufficient. Self-sufficient. Their code for you'll figure it out alone. When I was 16, I got my first job at a coffee shop, early morning shifts before school. The money was supposed to be for college savings. Then Madison needed a new laptop for her art classes. Then summer enrichment programs. Then the photography equipment she used exactly twice. Each time my mother would appear in my doorway with that same apologetic smile. Just a loan, honey. We'll pay you back. They never did. I kept track anyway. In a notebook hidden in my closet, I recorded every loan, every birthday where Madison got 3 gifts to my 1, every Christmas where the financial disparity was so obvious even relatives noticed. By the time I turned 18, I'd documented $23,000 in differential treatment. I didn't show anyone. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining it. College was my escape route. I got a full scholarship to a state school 6 hours away, worked 2 jobs to cover living expenses, and built a life where my value wasn't measured against Madison's needs. I met James during my junior year. He was a mechanical engineer, quiet and observant, the kind of person who noticed when I went tense during family phone calls. The first time he met my parents, we drove down for Thanksgiving. Madison was 17, in her senior year of high school, and the entire meal revolved around her college application process. Your sister is applying to 7 Ivy League schools, my mother announced proudly. We've hired a consultant to strengthen her essays. James glanced at me. I'd applied to 12 schools with no consultant, no one even reading my essays before I submitted them. That's great, I said automatically. Later in the car, James asked quietly, is it always like that? Like what? Like your furniture in your own family story. The observation was so precise it hurt. I wanted to defend them, to explain that they loved me in their own way, that Madison just needed more attention. But I was tired of lying, even to myself. Yes, I whispered. James and I got engaged 2 years after graduation. Simple proposal, simple ring, simple plans for a simple courthouse wedding. When I told my parents, my mother's first words were, "Oh, that's lovely, dear." Then, without pausing, "Did we tell you Madison made the dean's list again?" We set the date for June, sent out announcements, asked for nothing. My parents confirmed they'd attend. Just let us know the details when you have them. I sent 4 reminders. 4 confirmations. 4 reassurances that yes, we really were keeping it simple. No, they didn't need to bring anything, just themselves. The morning of my wedding, I stood in the courthouse in a dress I'd bought on sale, holding a small bouquet James's mother had insisted on arranging. I watched the door, waiting for my parents to arrive. They never came. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Sweetie, I'm so sorry. Madison had a crisis with her roommate situation and needed us to drive up to school immediately. You understand, we'll celebrate when things calm down. I got married with James's family as witnesses, with strangers from the courthouse signing our certificate, with absolutely no one from my own family present. That night in our tiny apartment, I finally cried. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears that wouldn't stop. James held me and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. 2 months later, my parents sent a card. Congratulations on your marriage, we're so proud of you. Inside was a $50 gift card to Target. Madison's 21st birthday party, which I wasn't invited to, cost them $8,000. I know because my mother accidentally sent me the invoice instead of the party planner. When I pointed out the mistake, she laughed it off. These things happen when you're planning multiple events. She didn't apologize for not inviting me. That's when I started keeping detailed records again. Not in a hidden notebook this time, but in spreadsheets organized by date and category. Every gift. Every expense. Every milestone they showed up for Madison and missed for me. The documentation was compulsive, obsessive maybe, but it was also proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that the disparity was real and measurable. Proof that when the right moment came, I'd be ready. The right moment arrived on Christmas morning with a $3.50 coupon book. I spent the week after Christmas in a strange, crystalline calm. James watched me carefully, the way you'd watch someone standing too close to a cliff edge. "Are you okay?" he asked on the third day, finding me at the kitchen table with my laptop open. "I'm fine." I didn't look up from the screen. Just working on something. What I was working on was a complete financial breakdown of 25 years of differential treatment. I'd pulled bank statements going back to childhood, using old photos to date approximate purchases. I'd cross-referenced family calendars I'd photographed over the years, tracking which events my parents attended and which they missed. I'd created a spreadsheet so detailed it could have been admitted as legal evidence. Madison's column was a waterfall of expenses. Dance classes, private schools, study abroad programs, car down payments, rent deposits, medical bills they paid without question. My column was a desert. Sparse birthday gifts, loans I'd given them that were never repaid, the scholarship money I'd earned entirely on my own. The differential wasn't just noticeable. It was staggering. Over 25 years, my parents had invested approximately $340,000 in Madison. In me? About $15,000, most of it before Madison was born. I sat back, staring at the numbers. $325,000 of difference. And they'd given her $47,000 more for a wedding while handing me coupons worth less than a cup of coffee. James appeared behind me, looking over my shoulder at the screen. Jesus Christ. I closed the laptop. That's what I thought. "What are you going to do with this?" "I don't know yet." I turned to face him. "But I'm done pretending it doesn't exist." His expression was complicated, worry and anger mixing with something that looked like relief. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." That simple statement, that unconditional support, made me realize what I'd been missing my entire life. Someone in my corner. Someone who didn't need me to earn their presence. Over the next month, I refined my documentation. I didn't just want numbers, I wanted context. I scanned childhood drawings I'd made for my parents, the ones I'd found in the trash while Madison's hung on the refrigerator for months. I compiled photographs from family events, labeled with who was present and who was absent. I transcribed voicemails my mother had left over the years. "Can't make it to your graduation, Madison has a college tour. We'll have to skip your birthday dinner, Madison needs help moving." I wasn't doing this for revenge. Not exactly. I was doing it because I needed them to see it. To confront the pattern they'd spent decades pretending didn't exist. In February, Madison's wedding planning went into full acceleration. My mother called me for the first time since Christmas. "Honey, we need to talk about Madison's bridal shower." I waited, phone pressed to my ear. "We'd love for you to co-host. Nothing too elaborate, maybe just organize some games and handle the decorations?" So my contribution to Madison's wedding was expected to be my labor. "What's the budget?" I asked. My mother laughed. "Oh well, we've spent so much on the wedding itself, we were hoping you could cover the shower costs. You know, as your gift to your sister." I let the silence stretch. "How much are you thinking? Maybe $2,000 or $3,000? Something intimate." $3,000 for a bridal shower, after giving me $3.50 for Christmas. The audacity was almost beautiful. "I'll think about it," I said carefully. "Don't think too long, sweetie. We need to send invitations soon." I hung up and added the request to my spreadsheet under a new category: additional expectations. Over the next few weeks, the requests multiplied. Could I design the wedding programs? Could I arrange hotel blocks for out-of-town guests? Could I coordinate the rehearsal dinner? Each task came with the same assumption that I'd do it for free, out of sisterly love, while my parents spent $47,000 on everything else. I said yes to all of it. And I documented every single request. In March, I flew out for a wedding dress appointment. Madison had asked me to come, and despite everything, part of me still hoped for something different. Maybe this would be the moment we connected. Maybe she'd acknowledge the disparity, or at least see me. The bridal salon was pristine, all champagne and floor-to-ceiling mirrors. Madison tried on 7 dresses, each one more expensive than the last. My mother wept at every single one. "You're so beautiful, baby." I sat on a velvet couch, drinking complimentary champagne, watching my sister transform into a bride. When she finally chose the dress, $8,000 of silk and lace, my mother hugged her tightly. Then she turned to me. "Isn't your sister gorgeous?" "Yes," I agreed. "She's beautiful." My mother tilted her head, studying me with sudden focus. "You know, you should really think about updating your wardrobe, honey. You've been wearing the same style since college." I looked down at my simple dress, the one I'd bought on sale, and had worn to 3 different family events because I couldn't afford constant new clothes. "I'll keep that in mind." Madison, still in her wedding dress, caught my eye in the mirror. For just a second, something like guilt flickered across her face. Then my mother said, "Now let's find bridesmaid dresses," and the moment vanished. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. I was assigned the role of family coordinator, which apparently meant all the work with none of the recognition. April brought the engagement party, held at an expensive restaurant downtown. I wasn't involved in planning it. I found out about it from a Facebook post. When I arrived, the private room was packed with relatives and family friends, all toasting Madison and her fiancé Derek. I stood near the back, holding a glass of wine I didn't drink, watching my parents make speeches about their youngest daughter's journey to this moment. My father's voice boomed across the room. "Madison has always known exactly what she wanted and gone after it with our full support." Polite applause. My mother added, "We're so blessed to have such a driven, passionate daughter." Singular. Daughter. As if I didn't exist. Uncle Frank found me near the bar. "Hey kiddo, good to see you. How's married life?" "It's good, thanks." "Your parents must be thrilled, both daughters settled now." I smiled, because that's what you do. "Yes, thrilled." He patted my shoulder and wandered off, and I stood there wondering if anyone in my family had even mentioned my marriage to him. Probably not. On my drive home that night, I called James. "How was it?" he asked. Exactly what I expected. I merged onto the highway, city lights blurring past. They gave speeches about how supportive they've always been. He was quiet for a moment. "You know you don't have to keep going to these things." I know. I did know. But I also knew I needed to see it through to the end. I need to finish this. Finish what? Whatever this is, I couldn't articulate it better than that. I just need to see where it goes. In May, the bridal shower happened. I'd spent $2,800 on it. Venue, decorations, food, games, favors. I'd designed everything myself, stayed up until 2 a.m. for 3 nights assembling centerpieces, hand-lettered place cards for 60 guests. The day of the shower, I arrived early to set up. My mother breezed in an hour later, took one look around and said, "Oh honey, this is lovely. A little simple but lovely." Then she proceeded to rearrange half of my decorations. Madison arrived in a white dress that probably cost more than my entire shower budget, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. The guests cooed over her. She opened gifts with perfectly practiced surprise, each one more extravagant than the last. KitchenAid mixer. Le Creuset cookware. Luxury bedding sets. When she got to my gift, a handmade photo album documenting our childhood, she smiled briefly. "This is sweet, thanks." She set it aside and moved on to the next box. The photo album had taken me 40 hours to create. At the end of the shower, my mother pulled me aside. "Thank you for putting this together, sweetie." She didn't offer to reimburse me. Didn't acknowledge the cost or the labor. Just a brief thank you, delivered like I'd picked up her dry cleaning. That night I updated my spreadsheet. Total investment in Madison's wedding by me, $2,800. Total acknowledgement from family, one sweet thanks. In June, 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother called with one final request. Honey, we need you to give a speech at the rehearsal dinner. I was at work, standing in the parking lot during my lunch break. A speech? Yes, something about growing up with Madison. You know, heartwarming sister memories. I thought about it. About all the memories I could share. The time Madison broke my science project and my parents made me apologize for leaving it where she could reach it. The time she borrowed my car without asking and returned it with an empty tank and a dent. The time she told my parents I was being selfish for wanting to spend Christmas with James's family, and they uninvited me from Christmas Eve dinner as punishment. Sure, I said. I'll prepare something. Keep it under 5 minutes. We have a lot of toasts planned. I hung up and sat in my car, staring at nothing. 5 minutes to summarize a lifetime of being invisible. I could do that. The rehearsal dinner was held at a country club, all soft lighting and string quartets. I wore a simple navy dress, the nicest thing I owned, and arrived exactly on time. Madison looked radiant in rehearsal dinner chic, her hair in perfect waves, surrounded by bridesmaids who'd all flown in for the occasion. I wasn't one of them. My parents held court at the head table, my father in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, my mother in a dress I recognized from Neiman Marcus. I took my seat at a side table, away from the wedding party, next to relatives I barely knew. Dinner was elaborate. Multiple courses, wine pairings, waiters in white gloves. I picked at my food, watching my parents beam at Madison, watching the easy affection that had never extended to me. After dessert, the toasts began. Derek's father spoke about gaining a daughter. Derek's best man told embarrassing college stories. Madison's maid of honor, her college roommate, gave a tearful speech about friendship and forever. Then my mother stood, glass raised. I want to say a few words about my baby girl. She talked for 12 minutes. About Madison's childhood, her achievements, her dreams, her light. She mentioned me once. Madison's lucky to have such a supportive older sister. Polite applause. Eyes turning to me briefly before sliding away. Then my father stood. He talked for another 10 minutes, his voice thick with emotion. Madison has been our greatest joy, he said. Watching her grow into this incredible woman has been the honor of our lives. Singular again. Joy. As if they only had one daughter. When the official toasts ended, my mother looked at me expectantly. I stood slowly, my prepared notes folded in my pocket. I didn't take them out. Instead, I looked around the room at all these people who'd watched my parents favor one daughter over the other for decades and said nothing. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I began. My voice was steady, calm. To celebrate Madison and Derek. Madison smiled at me, relaxed and unsuspecting. Growing up with Madison was an education, I continued. I learned a lot about myself, about family, about what we're willing to overlook in the name of keeping peace. My mother's smile flickered slightly. I learned that love isn't always equal, and fairness is a choice, not a given. The room had gone very quiet. I raised my glass. To Madison and Derek. May your marriage be built on honesty and reciprocity. I sat down before anyone could respond. Confused applause scattered through the room. My mother's face had gone carefully blank. Madison stared at me, something uncertain creeping into her expression. James, sitting beside me now, squeezed my hand under the table. After dinner, as guests mingled, my mother cornered me near the bar. That was an odd toast, honey. Her voice was light, but her eyes were sharp. Was it? You almost made it sound like you were unhappy. Did I? She blinked, recalibrating. Well, tomorrow's the big day. I hope you're planning to be more celebratory. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. Oh, I have plans. She relaxed slightly, misunderstanding completely. Madison will need your support tomorrow. She walked away, already moving on to the next task. I watched her go, this woman who'd given birth to me but never really seen me. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow she would. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of weather that felt like a blessing. I woke early in the hotel room James and I had paid for ourselves, despite my parents' booking rooms for the entire bridal party. "Are you sure about this?" James asked, watching me get ready. I looked at him in the mirror. I've never been more sure of anything. The ceremony was at 4 p.m., but I had errands to run first. I drove to a print shop I'd contacted weeks earlier and picked up my order. 3 spiral-bound booklets, professionally printed, carefully organized. The cover page read, "A Financial History of Differential Treatment, 1998-2024. Each booklet was 47 pages long. One for each $1,000 they'd given Madison for her wedding. Inside was everything. Every spreadsheet, every receipt, every documented instance of favoritism spanning 25 years. I'd organized it chronologically, with photographs, bank statements, and comparison charts that made the disparity impossible to dismiss. It was comprehensive, irrefutable, and devastating. I made one stop before the venue. My parents' house, empty because they were already at the country club handling last-minute details. I let myself in with the key I'd never returned and went straight to Madison's old bedroom, now converted into my mother's home office. On the desk, I left one of the booklets, open to a page showing side-by-side Christmas expenses from the year I was 12. Madison, $1,847. Me, $92. Then I drove to the venue. The country club was transformed. White flowers everywhere, string lights woven through trees, a tent so enormous it could have housed a circus. $47,000, visible in every detail. I checked in at the guest book, wearing the dress I'd bought specifically for this day. Emerald green, bold and unmissable. I wasn't hiding anymore. The ceremony was beautiful. Madison looked like a princess. Derek looked dazed with happiness. My parents cried in the front row. I sat in the back with James, watching it all with that same crystalline calm I'd felt since Christmas. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," everyone applauded. I checked my watch. 3 hours until my speech at the reception. The reception hall glittered. Candlelight, champagne fountains, a live band playing jazz standards. Each table had centerpieces that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. The wedding cake was a towering work of art. I found my assigned seat, far from the head table, and sat down. James sat beside me, his hand finding mine. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind." Dinner was served. Speeches began. Derek's father, Derek's best man, the maid of honor again. My mother stood, dabbing her eyes, and gave a 15-minute speech about Madison's journey to this moment. She mentioned me again briefly. Madison's sister has always been there in the background, supporting quietly. In the background. That's how she saw me. Finally, my father stood. "Before we continue," he announced, "we have one more special speech. Madison's sister would like to say a few words." All eyes turned to me. I stood, smoothing my dress, and walked to the microphone. 200 guests watched me, this woman most of them barely remembered, finally taking up space. I pulled out my notes, the pages I'd written and rewritten 100 times. Then I looked at Madison, radiant in her expensive dress at her expensive wedding, surrounded by the evidence of our parents' love. "Good evening," I began. My voice carried clearly through the hall. "I'm honored to be here tonight celebrating Madison and Derek." Polite smiles. This was the script they expected. "I wanted to talk about family," I continued. "About what it means to love and support someone unconditionally." My mother nodded approvingly. "Growing up, I watched my parents demonstrate that kind of love," I said. "I watched them sacrifice, invest, and show up again and again for one of their daughters." Madison's smile was uncertain now. I watched them spend $340,000 on her education, her activities, her life experiences. I documented it actually. Every penny. The room went very still. My mother's face drained of color. I watched them pay for her car, her apartment deposits, her study abroad, her medical bills. I continued, my voice never wavering. I watched them give her $47,000 for this wedding. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And I watched them give me a $3.50 coupon book for Christmas. Someone in the back dropped a glass. It shattered in the silence. So I made something for everyone here tonight, I said. A little gift, to help you understand what differential treatment looks like when it's documented over 25 years. I pulled the booklets from my bag and began walking between tables, placing one at each. These contain every financial transaction, every missed milestone, every time my parents chose Madison over me. It's all here. Dates, amounts, photographs, comparisons. My father stood abruptly. Sit down. This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate, Dad? I turned to face him. Documenting the truth? Or the truth itself? My mother was crying now, real tears this time, not the decorative kind from her speech. Madison stood, her face pale. You're ruining my wedding. No, I said gently. I'm just finally making myself visible. I walked back to the microphone. For those interested, I continued, page 18 shows the year I got into medical school. I was accepted to 3 programs. I couldn't attend any of them because I had no money and my parents had just bought Madison a car. My mother's sob echoed through the hall. Page 22 documents the time I was hospitalized with appendicitis. I called my parents 12 times. They didn't come because Madison had a dance recital. Relatives were flipping through booklets now, faces shocked. Page 31 shows my wedding announcement, which received a $50 Target gift card. For comparison, Madison's engagement party, on the next page, cost $8,000. Derek's parents were reading, their expressions hardening. I could go on, I said. There are 47 pages. But I think the pattern is clear. I looked at my parents, both of them frozen in horror. You spent my entire life making me feel worthless, I said quietly. Every gift, every missed event, every time you chose her over me, you sent a message. I heard it. I just stopped believing I deserved better. Madison was crying now too, mascara streaming down her face. But here's what I learned, I continued. Love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about seeing someone and choosing them anyway. I turned to James, who'd stood and was walking toward me. I found that love, I said. Not from the family I was born into, but from the one I chose. James reached me, took my hand. I looked out at the room full of witnesses. So here's my toast, I said, raising my empty glass. To Madison and Derek. May you build a marriage based on equality. May you never know what it feels like to measure your worth in dollars and cents. And may you remember this moment, when the truth you all pretended not to see finally became impossible to ignore. I set the microphone down and walked out, James beside me, leaving 200 people in stunned silence. Behind me, I heard Madison collapse into sobs. I heard my mother's desperate, "Wait!" I heard chaos erupting in a room that had been so carefully orchestrated. But I didn't turn around. I walked out of that country club, out of that family, and into the night air that smelled like freedom. James and I drove in silence for 10 minutes before he finally spoke. How do you feel? I felt the weight I'd carried for 31 years lift slightly from my shoulders. Lighter, I said. And I meant it. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. By the time James and I got back to our hotel room, my phone had 63 missed calls. I turned it off and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I turned it back on to find messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Aunt Diane, I had no idea, I'm so sorry. Uncle Frank, your parents owe you an explanation. Cousin Rachel, I always thought something was off, now I know why. Madison sent 14 texts, each one more desperate than the last. How could you? You destroyed my wedding. Everyone's talking about it. Mom won't stop crying. Dad said you're no longer welcome in this family. I stared at that last message for a long time. No longer welcome in a family I'd never truly been part of. The threat had no teeth. My mother's voicemail was barely coherent. How dare you? How dare you humiliate us like that? Everything we did because Madison needed it. You were always fine. You were always self-sufficient. We gave you independence. We gave you strength. And this is how you repay us? Her words confirmed everything I'd documented. To them, neglect had been a gift. Exclusion had been character building. They'd rewritten reality so thoroughly they actually believed it. Over the next week, I received dozens of calls from relatives wanting to talk, to understand, to take sides. I answered none of them. The only call I returned was from Derek's mother, Helen. I read the entire document, she said quietly. I want you to know that we had no idea. Most people didn't, I replied. It's easy not to see what you're not looking for. Derek is reconsidering the marriage. That surprised me. Because of what I did? Because of what he saw. The way your parents treated you, the way Madison allowed it. He's realizing some things about the family he almost married into. I felt a twist of guilt. I didn't mean to destroy their relationship. You didn't destroy anything, Helen said firmly. You revealed what was already there. What happens next is up to them. We talked for an hour. She asked questions, really listened, treated me like someone whose experience mattered. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected. Validation. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a certified letter from my parents. It was written by a lawyer, formal and cold. They were demanding I cease and desist from sharing defamatory materials about the family. They threatened legal action for emotional distress and reputational harm. I showed it to James. Can they actually sue you? He asked. Maybe, but everything in those booklets is documented truth, bank statements, photographs, receipts. They can't sue me for showing people their own actions. I drafted a response through my own lawyer. The cease and desist was ignored. Instead, I filed for a formal accounting of the loans I'd given them over the years, $23,000 they'd never repaid, with interest. If they wanted to play legal games, I was ready. Their lawyer never responded. Madison called 3 weeks after the wedding, her voice small and uncertain. Can we talk? I met her at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked different. Smaller somehow, without our parents' spotlight on her. Derek broke off the engagement, she said immediately. I'd heard through the family grapevine. I'm sorry. Her eyes were red-rimmed. You destroyed everything. I told the truth, I corrected gently. What got destroyed was the illusion. She stared into her coffee cup. I never asked them to treat you differently. You never asked them to stop either. That landed. She flinched. I just existed, she whispered. I was just living my life. I didn't know it was hurting you. You knew, I said softly. Maybe you didn't want to know, but you saw it. We all saw it. Silence stretched between us. What do you want from me? She finally asked. Nothing, I said honestly. I don't need anything from you anymore. So we're just done? 24 years and we're just done? I thought about it, about the sister I'd tried so hard to love, to protect, to support. The sister who'd taken everything and never questioned if she deserved it all. We were done a long time ago, I said. I was just the last one to accept it. I stood to leave. Madison grabbed my hand. I could change, we could start over. I looked down at her, this woman who'd spent her whole life at the center of our parents' world. Maybe you could, I said. But I don't want to wait around to find out. I spent 31 years waiting for this family to see me. I'm done waiting. I left her there, crying into her expensive coffee. I felt sad but not guilty. Grief, but not regret. My parents never called to apologize. Instead, 3 months later, they sent a Christmas card. The photo on the front was just the two of them, no children. Inside, a generic printed message, wishing you joy this holiday season. No personal note. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just the bare minimum of contact to avoid looking completely estranged to their social circle. I hung it on my refrigerator, right next to the $3.50 coupon book I'd kept. Reminders of what I'd walked away from. A year after the wedding, I got a Facebook message from Derek. I wanted to thank you, he wrote, for showing me who Madison really was before I legally bound myself to her. We would have been miserable. He'd started dating someone new, he said, someone kind and self-aware. Madison, according to family gossip, had moved back in with our parents. The three of them still locked in their cycle of dysfunction. Still blaming me for breaking the silence instead of acknowledging what the silence had hidden. I didn't feel triumphant about it. Just relieved I was no longer part of it. 2 years after the wedding, I changed my phone number. I didn't tell my parents or Madison. The calls had dwindled anyway, mostly my mother trying to guilt me into reconciliation that required me to apologize for embarrassing them. No acknowledgement of the 25 years of favoritism. No recognition that their actions had consequences. Just anger that I'd made their private dysfunction public. James and I moved to a different state. His job transferred and I found work easily. We bought a small house with a garden. We filled it with furniture we chose together, photographs of trips we'd taken, art from local markets. We built a life that had nothing to do with proving ourselves. On our 3rd anniversary, James's parents flew out to visit. His mother, Karen, helped me plant tomatoes. His father, Robert, taught me how to fix a leaky faucet. They asked about my work, remembered details from previous conversations, showed up when they said they would. The basics of love that had been so foreign to me. You seem different, Karen observed one afternoon, her hands deep in soil. More settled. I thought about it, about the woman who'd stood up at that wedding and finally demanded to be seen. I stopped waiting for permission to matter, I said. She smiled. Good, you never needed it anyway. 3 years after the wedding, I got an email from a cousin I'd been close to as a child. Madison and your parents had a huge falling out, she wrote. Something about money. Madison apparently expected them to buy her a house and they said they couldn't afford it. She accused them of lying about their finances. It's a whole mess. I read the message twice and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just the distant recognition that dysfunction always eats itself eventually. I deleted the email and went back to my life. 4 years after the wedding, I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the patterns I'd survived. My therapist, Dr. Chen, asked in our 3rd session, "What do you think you're still carrying from your family?" I considered it. The need to document everything, to prove I'm not imagining things. And are you imagining things? No, but I still catch myself collecting evidence of being treated well by James, by friends, like I need proof that I'm valued. What would happen if you stopped collecting proof? The question unsettled me for weeks. Slowly, I started letting moments exist without documenting them. A kind word from a coworker. A thoughtful gift from James. A random compliment from a stranger. I let them be enough on their own without needing to add them to some invisible ledger. It was harder than I expected. But gradually, I learned to trust that good things could happen without me having to prove they'd occurred. 5 years after the wedding, James and I had a daughter. We named her Elena, after his grandmother. The day she was born, I held her in the hospital room and made a promise. You will never have to earn my love. You will never have to document your worth. You will always, always be seen. James stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Should we call your parents? I looked down at Elena, this perfect tiny human who deserved better than generational dysfunction. No, I said. This is our family, they're not part of it. He nodded, unsurprised. We sent birth announcements to his family, to the friends who'd become our chosen family. We didn't send one to my parents or Madison. 6 months later, my mother found out through Facebook. She sent a message, "How could you not tell us? We're grandparents." I blocked her and made my profiles private. Elena would grow up knowing James's parents as Grandma and Grandpa. She'd grow up surrounded by people who showed up, who chose her every day, who loved without conditions. She'd never know what it felt like to measure her worth against a sibling. That broke the cycle more effectively than any confrontation ever could. 6 years after the wedding, I ran into Madison at a professional conference. We were in different fields, but the networking event was large enough that our paths crossed. She looked tired, older than her 30 years. We stared at each other across the hotel lobby. She walked over slowly. "Hi." Awkward silence. "I heard you had a daughter," she said. "I did, congratulations, thank you." More silence. "I've been in therapy," Madison said suddenly. "Working through a lot of stuff." "That's good. I understand now what you were trying to say about the favoritism." I waited. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not seeing it, for benefiting from it, for not standing up for you." The apology I'd wanted for so many years, finally spoken. It felt anticlimactic. "I appreciate that," I said. "Could we maybe get coffee sometime, start over?" I looked at this woman who'd been my sister, who'd lived an entirely different childhood in the same house. "I don't think so," I said gently. "I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not interested in rebuilding something that was never really there." Her face crumpled. "So that's it? We're just strangers?" "We've been strangers for a long time, Madison. I just stopped pretending otherwise." I walked away before she could respond. It didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. 7 years after the wedding, my father had a heart attack. Madison called me from the hospital. "You need to come." "Why?" "Because he's your father." Biology doesn't obligate me to show up for someone who never showed up for me. He's dying. I felt something twist in my chest, but it wasn't urgency. "I'm sorry he's sick," I said. "But I'm not coming." "How can you be so